The fluorescent lights of the airport terminal buzzed overhead, resembling angry wasps as I stood there paralyzed. My carry-on bag slipped from my nerveless fingers, landing on the polished floor with a dull thud that barely registered in my mind. My heart had ceased its rhythmic beating. I was certain of it. The world around me had shrunk to a single, impossible point of focus. My husband, Miles, standing 30 feet away at the arrivals gate, clutching a bouquet of red roses. Red roses, our flowers, the very same ones he had gifted me on our first date 7 years ago. But he wasn't searching for me. His gaze roamed the crowd with a fervor I hadn't witnessed aimed at me in months, perhaps years. And then I spotted her, a woman with honey blonde hair cascading down her back, dressed in a sundress that accentuated legs that seemed to stretch on forever. She emerged from the arrivals gate, her face lighting up with a radiant smile as she caught sight of him. What unfolded next would be etched into my memory forever, looping endlessly through the sleepless nights that would ensue. She ran. No, she didn't walk or hurry. She ran toward my husband with a kind of unrestrained joy that romance movies strive to depict, yet never quite succeed. Her suitcase was forgotten, abandoned by a stranger who managed to catch it before it toppled over. And Miles, the man who had vowed to love me until death parted us, dropped those roses and opened his arms wide. She leaped into him, and he caught her effortlessly. Her legs wrapped around his waist as his hands gripped her thighs, supporting her weight as though he had done it 1,000 times before. It was like a choreographed dance, like it was completely normal. They kissed, not a mere peck, nor a casual greeting. They kissed with a desperation akin to drowning people gasping for air, hungrily, as if they would perish without it. His hand tangled in her hair, while her fingers clutched at his shirt. And there I stood, watching my entire world go up in flames, as travelers brushed past me, completely oblivious to the murder taking place before them. Not of a person, but of something equally invaluable: trust, love, and the future I had envisioned for us. I can't recall picking up my bag. I don't remember walking to the taxi stand or giving the driver our address, though it would never feel like ours again. All that remains in my memory is the cold rage that began to crystallize in my chest, freezing my tears before they could spill, hardening my heart into something sharp and unforgiving. Miles had made his choice. Now I would make mine, and I would ensure he regretted every single moment of joy he had stolen from me. Before we continue, I want to express my gratitude for bearing witness to the moment my world shattered. If you believe that betrayal warrants consequences and that women have every right to fight back, please subscribe and share the city you are watching us from. Your support aids in bringing more stories of painful truths, fierce justice, and hard-won redemption to those who need to hear them. Now let's rewind to the beginning. Enjoy listening. Just 24 hours earlier, I had been happy, or at least content with the illusion of happiness, which, for many marriages, amounts to the same thing. I gazed at my reflection in the bathroom mirror of my hotel room in Chicago, practicing my presentation smile one last time before the final day of the conference. Kathleen Walker. No, I had stopped using my maiden name 3 years ago when we got married. Kathleen Hayes stared back at me in the mirror. 32 years old, senior account manager at Brennan & Associates, wife to Miles Hayes, an architect and the man I had loved since I was 25. My phone buzzed on the marble counter. It was Miles. My stomach did that familiar little flip it always did when I saw his name, even after 7 years together. Missing you, Cad. Can't wait until tomorrow night. I'm making your favorite, that Thai curry you love. A smile spread across my face, warmth blossoming in my chest. Everything was fine. We were fine. Yes, we had been distant lately. Yes, our conversations had turned superficial, limited to logistics and grocery lists. Yes, our sex life had dwindled to obligatory encounters every few weeks. But we were just busy. That's what happened when two careers collided with the mundane realities of marriage. It didn't mean anything was wrong. Can't wait. I love you. I replied, sending the text before gathering my materials and heading down to the conference hall. The next 8 hours unfolded in a blur of presentations, networking, and forced enthusiasm. By 4 p.m., my face ached from smiling, and my feet throbbed from the heels I had foolishly chosen that morning. My colleague Jennifer cornered me by the coffee station. "Drinks tonight. Come on. It's the last night. You've been hiding in your room every evening." "I'm just tired," I replied, which was true. But the real reason was that I missed Miles. Pathetic, perhaps, but after 3 nights in this hotel, I had found myself FaceTiming him each evening, talking about nothing, just wanting to see his face. Except he had been distracted during those calls, hadn't he? Glancing at his phone, claiming he was tired. I shook off the thought, cutting the conversation short. Paranoia didn't suit anyone. "Come on," Jennifer pressed. "Just one drink. You've earned it after landing the Castellano account." I was about to decline when my phone rang. It was my boss, Patricia. "Kathleen, fantastic news. Castellano wants to move up the timeline. They need you back tomorrow for a signing meeting." "I know you weren't supposed to fly back until Sunday," she continued, but I interrupted her. "That's fine. I can catch an earlier flight." Truthfully, I was thrilled. One less night away from home, one less night spent in a hotel bed that smelled of industrial detergent instead of the lavender fabric softener Miles always used. I could surprise him, maybe even pick up that expensive wine he loved from the airport shop. I changed my flight to Friday evening and texted Miles that I'd see him Sunday as planned. No point in spoiling the surprise. I spent the next few hours mentally planning our reunion. Perhaps we could enjoy a lazy Saturday morning in bed, just like we used to when we first moved in together. Maybe we could talk, really talk about why we had been feeling so disconnected. Maybe everything would be okay. I boarded the plane at 7 p.m. Chicago time, settled into my seat, and allowed myself to daydream about coming home. I had no idea I was flying toward my own execution. The airport terminal was bustling when I landed at 9:30 p.m. on Friday night. I hadn't checked a bag, so I headed straight for the exit, already imagining Miles's surprise when I walked through our front door. That's when I saw him. At first, I thought I was hallucinating. Stress, exhaustion, too many conference room pastries. Any of those explanations could clarify why my husband's face had emerged from the crowd of strangers waiting at arrivals. But then he shifted, and I caught sight of the flowers, those unmistakable red roses. My heart leapt. He had somehow discovered my early flight and come to surprise me. This was precisely the kind of romantic gesture that had made me fall in love with him in the first place. I began walking toward him, a smile already forming on my lips, my hand half raised in a wave. But something halted me. Perhaps it was the way he stood, weight forward on his toes, eager and alert in a way I hadn't seen in years. Perhaps it was the freshly ironed shirt he never bothered to press unless it was for something significant. Maybe it was the scent of cologne that wafted toward me even from 10 feet away, the expensive kind he reserved for special occasions. Or maybe it was the dreadful realization that he was looking past me, through me, as if I didn't exist. I stepped sideways, hiding behind a family with 3 screaming children and a mountain of luggage. My hands began to tremble. Something was wrong. Something was very, very wrong. That's when she appeared. She was stunning in that effortless way that some women are, like she had rolled out of bed looking like a magazine cover. In her mid-20s, perhaps young enough that the term homewrecker felt almost quaint. She wore casual clothes, jeans and a loose sweater, but they fit her like they were crafted specifically for her body, exuding an air of effortless elegance. Miles's entire demeanor transformed when he saw her. The polite mask he had worn around me for months, I could now see it for what it was, a mask, shattered. Pure joy radiated from him. Desperate longing, an emotion so profound it cannot be faked. He had never looked at me with that kind of intensity, not even on our wedding day. She ran toward him, and in that moment, the world slowed down. I watched each step, each movement, as if choreographed by some cruel god intent on ensuring I absorbed every detail. Her hair bounced with each stride. Her face radiated a glow. She looked as if she were racing toward her future. She was running toward my husband. The roses slipped from his grasp. His arms opened wide, and she launched herself at him as though gravity didn't apply. He caught her with the ease of familiarity. This wasn't their first reunion. Her legs wrapped around him, and his hands gripped her thighs with a familiarity that made bile rise in my throat. They kissed. The family in front of me moved, unwittingly exposing me to full view, but neither Miles nor his girlfriend, mistress, replacement, noticed. They were too lost in each other, too consumed by their joy to see the woman crumbling just 10 feet away. Someone bumped into me from behind. "Excuse me," they muttered, annoyance lacing their tone. I couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Miles finally broke the kiss, setting her down but keeping his arms around her waist. He was smiling, truly smiling, and saying something I couldn't hear over the rushing in my ears. She laughed, throwing her head back, and I saw his eyes trace the line of her throat with an intimacy that felt like a violation. That's what shattered my paralysis. Not the kiss, not the embrace, but the way he looked at her, as if she were the only real thing in a world of shadows. I turned and walked away, my legs moving on autopilot toward the exit. Behind me, I heard Miles laugh, a sound of pure happiness that had been absent from our home for longer than I could recall. The taxi ride home lasted 20 minutes, but I don't remember any of it. I remember unlocking our front door, the door we had painted blue together 2 summers ago, laughing as we got more paint on each other than on the wood. I remember the familiar scent of our home, that distinct blend of Miles' coffee and my vanilla candles, mingling with the slight mustiness of the basement we kept meaning to clean. I remember walking up the stairs to our bedroom, each step feeling heavier than the last. I stood in the middle of the room we had shared for 3 years, gazing at the bed where we had made love, argued, recovered from the flu, and finally, I allowed myself to grasp the truth. My marriage was over. Miles had killed it. He had murdered it with those red roses, that kiss, and the woman who fit in his arms as if she had been designed for that exact purpose. But if my marriage was dead, then I was a widow, and widows had rights. Widows got to grieve. Widows got to rage. Widows got revenge. I didn't cry. That surprised me. I had always been a crier. Sad movies, touching commercials, those videos of soldiers returning home to their dogs. Yet, standing in my bedroom, staring at the framed photo of our wedding day on the nightstand, I felt nothing but a cold, clarifying fury. My phone buzzed. It was Miles. "Hey, babe. Just grabbing drinks with the guys from work. Don't wait up. Love you." The casual cruelty of that lie, the ease with which it rolled off his fingers, ignited something dark within me. He was with her right now, probably in some hotel room, tangled in sheets that didn't smell like lavender, doing things to her that he once did to me, or worse, things he had never done with me, reserved for someone special. I could confront him. I could call him right now, scream about what I had witnessed, demand explanations and apologies. I could pack his things and leave them on the lawn. I could file for divorce on Monday morning and put an end to this before the weekend was over. But where was the justice in that? Where was the consequence? He would get to keep his happiness, his new girlfriend, his fresh start. He'd paint me as the bitter ex-wife, the one who couldn't let go. Within a year, he would marry her, and they would have beautiful blonde children, living in some perfect house. He would rarely think about the woman whose life he had shattered. I wanted him to hurt the way I was hurting. I wanted him to lose everything that mattered to him. I wanted him to understand the magnitude of what he had done, to feel the full weight of his betrayal pressing down on him until he couldn't breathe. I wanted revenge, real revenge, the kind that leaves scars. But first, I needed information. I sat down at our shared desk, the one where we had addressed our wedding invitations, and opened Miles's laptop. He had never bothered to change the password from my birthday, which felt like its own kind of betrayal. Too lazy to hide his affair properly, too confident I'd never look. His email loaded. I scrolled through, my hands steady despite the rage trembling within me. Work emails, spam newsletter subscriptions, nothing obvious. But I had spent 7 years with this man. I knew how he thought. I checked his deleted folder, jackpot. The emails dated back 6 months. 6 months! While I had been worrying about our growing distance, trying to plan date nights, and contemplating whether we should see a marriage counselor, he had been busy writing love letters to someone named Victoria. Victoria. Even her name sounded elegant, expensive, the kind of name that belonged to someone who wore sundresses and dashed through airports like a scene from a romantic comedy brought to life. I began to read. Ty, I can't stop thinking about last weekend. Being with you feels like coming alive after years of sleepwalking. I know this is complicated, but I've never felt this way before. Not even, he had stopped himself before writing, not even with Kathleen. But the implication hung there, devastatingly clear. I continued reading, my vision narrowing, my breath becoming shallow. I'm going to tell her soon, I promise. I just need to figure out the right time. She doesn't deserve to be hurt, but I can't keep living this lie. That was from 2 months ago. 2 months of promising to leave me while sharing my bed, enjoying my cooking, using my love as a safety net while he explored his grand passion. The most recent email was from yesterday. Can't wait to see you tomorrow, baby. I'm counting down the hours. Maybe after we get back from the airport, we can go to our place. Our place. They had a place somewhere they could pretend to be a normal couple instead of a married man and his mistress. I opened his browser history next, my detective work fueled by pure rage. Hotel bookings, extravagant dinners at restaurants I had mentioned wanting to Ty, places where he'd claimed he was either too busy or too tired to go, jewelry purchases, a necklace I had never seen before, and florists, so many florists. Every red rose he had given me over the last 6 months had been bought alongside a dozen for her, a 2-for-1 special on Betrayal. Next, I found his text messages. He had been careful to delete most of them, but a few had slipped through the cracks. Photos of Victoria smiling at the camera, clearly captured by Miles. Videos of her laughing, intimate and casual. Screenshots of inside jokes I wasn't part of. And then I stumbled upon the worst one. A text from 3 weeks ago when I had been sick with the flu, miserable and feverish, while Miles had claimed he had to work late. Thank you for taking care of me today. No one's ever made me feel this cherished. I love you. I love you too, Miles had responded. You're my whole world. I had been home, puking into a bucket, while he played house with his mistress, feeding her soup and probably tucking her into bed with that gentle tenderness he used to show me. The laptop screen blurred as I realized I was crying after all. Hot tears of pure rage spilled down my cheeks. But these weren't sad tears. They were born of fury, liquid grief transformed into something sharper, something that would cut. I spent the next 3 hours downloading everything. Emails, photos, texts, credit card statements, showing dinners, hotels, and gifts. I created a folder labeled Insurance and backed it up to 3 different cloud services: Evidence, Ammunition, Proof. Then I began digging deeper. Miles's architecture firm had a strict ethics policy regarding workplace relationships. I pulled up the document, scanning through the clauses regarding professional conduct and moral character. Victoria's LinkedIn profile revealed she had started as a junior designer at his firm 8 months ago, right around the time Miles had begun working late more frequently. I cross-referenced the timeline. Their first hotel booking had been 7 months ago, which meant Miles had actively pursued her, seduced her, and initiated his affair while she was still his subordinate. That violated company policy in at least 6 different ways. I took meticulous notes, careful, detailed notes about dates, times, and policy violations. Then I turned my attention to Victoria herself. Social media proved to be a gold mine. She was 26, fresh out of grad school, and new to the city. Her Instagram account was public, filled with artsy photos of architecture and coffee shops. My stomach twisted at the occasional glimpses of a man's hand, arm, or shoulder. Miles had been cropped out of her public life, yet he lingered in the margins. Just yesterday, she had posted a photo from the Chicago airport with the caption, "Amazing week at the architecture conference, coming home to something special, the conference." They had been together at the same conference while I was 3 states away, missing Miles, while he was likely in the room next to hers, sneaking over after hours, touching her the way he used to touch me. I screenshotted everything, her posts, her follows, her friends. Information was power, and I was determined to gather every weapon I could. By the time I finished, it was 3 a.m. My eyes burned, my head pounded, and my chest felt hollow, scooped out, leaving only the bones of rage to hold me upright. Miles's lies, the timeline, and his betrayal were meticulously mapped out across multiple documents. I knew where they had been, what they had done, and how much he had spent on her. I knew the pet names he used for her. I knew she was allergic to shellfish, adored old movies, and dreamed of visiting Japan. I had gathered every detail, everything except for the one thing that truly mattered. We had been happy once, hadn't we? Or was I the only one truly invested in our marriage while he had simply been waiting for something better to come along? My phone buzzed again. Miles. "Just got home. You're probably asleep. I'll be quiet. Love you, Kat." He was lying. I checked the security system on my phone. We had installed cameras after a break-in scare last year, and the front door hadn't opened. Miles wasn't home. He was with her, still with her, likely in bed beside her right now, texting his wife that he loved her while his mistress lay against his chest. The betrayal was so complete, so absolute, that it almost became beautiful in its awfulness, a flawless lie, almost. I typed a response. "Love you too, sleep well." 2 could play the lying game, and I was ready to become a champion. Miles came home Saturday morning at 9 a.m., looking rumpled and guilty, working hard to appear casual. I was in the kitchen, making coffee, wearing his favorite shirt of mine, playing the role of the devoted wife. "Hey," he seemed surprised to see me. "I thought you weren't back until tomorrow." I turned to watch him, to calculate, to see his brain scramble for the lie he would need. But I spoke first, my voice steady, my smile flawless. "Last-minute change, caught a late flight. I texted you, but you must have been asleep." I walked over and kissed his cheek, noting the flinch he tried to conceal. "How were drinks with the guys?" "Oh, you know, same old." He set down his keys that hadn't been in our house all night. "I crashed at Ben's place, didn't want to drive after drinking." Ben, his best friend, who had been his best man at our wedding, and someone I had considered a friend as well. Did Ben know? Was he in on this? "That's smart," I said, pouring him coffee just the way he liked it. 2 sugars, a splash of cream. "I'm glad you're being safe." He relaxed, accepting the mug. We stood in our kitchen, in the home we had built together, drinking coffee and lying to each other's faces. It was almost peaceful. Then he asked, "What do you want to do today?" I suggested, "I was thinking maybe we could catch that new exhibit at the Modern Art Museum you mentioned." He had no intention of spending the day with me. He was already mentally calculating how to escape, how to get back to Victoria. But he had to pretend, had to maintain the charade. "That sounds wonderful," I lied. "But actually, I'm exhausted from the trip. Mind if we just have a lazy day? Maybe order in and watch movies? Relief flooded his face, quickly masked. Of course, whatever you want, babe. We spent the day in performative domesticity. Miles sat with his laptop, supposedly working, but I could tell he was texting Victoria. I noticed the slight smile on his face, the way his fingers flew across the keys. I was on the couch with a book, watching him from the corner of my eye, memorizing this moment, the last peaceful day before I burned his world down. He ordered Thai food for dinner, my favorite, just as he had promised. We ate on the couch, watching a movie neither of us cared about. His phone buzzed constantly, or so he claimed, citing an important project. That night, he reached for me in bed, actually reached for me, his hand sliding across my waist, pulling me closer. I froze. "I missed you," he murmured against my neck. The audacity, the sheer breathtaking audacity of this man who had spent the previous night with another woman, who probably still lingered in his scent, her perfume clinging to him even after his shower. He was using me as a palate cleanser between his real passion. I could have pushed him away, I should have, but a chilling thought occurred to me. Let him have this. Let him touch me, make love to me, whisper sweet lies in the dark. Let him believe everything was fine, that he had gotten away with it. Because when I finally struck, when I made him pay, the memory of this moment, his false tenderness, his casual cruelty, would make the fall so much harder. So I turned in his arms and kissed him back. I allowed him to make love to me in our bed, performing my part flawlessly. I made the right sounds, touched the right places, and gave him what he wanted. All the while, my mind was consumed with thoughts of Victoria, of airport roses, of 6 months of lies, and the revenge I was meticulously planning. When he finally fell asleep, his arm draped across my waist as if everything was normal, I stared at the ceiling, finishing the design of his destruction in my mind. It would take time, patience, and perfect execution, but Miles had taught me well. After all, he had been living a double life for 6 months. Surely I could maintain a facade for a few weeks. The only difference was that when my performance ended, there would be consequences. Brutal, devastating, unforgivable consequences. I smiled in the dark and began to plan. Sunday unfolded in the same carefully constructed normalcy. Miles suggested brunch at our favorite cafe, the very place where we had shared our first date, which felt like a special kind of cruelty. I agreed, playing my part, laughing at his jokes and reaching across the table to touch his hand. I observed him checking his phone obsessively, noting the disappointment flicker across his face when I proposed spending the afternoon together. He had been planning to see her, I realized. Sunday was likely their day, and my early return had disrupted their routine. Good, let him squirm. On Monday morning, I returned to work as if nothing had changed. My colleagues congratulated me on securing the Castellano account, and Patricia took me out for lunch to celebrate. I smiled, worked diligently, and performed my role with competence, while my mind churned through strategies. I had spent the entire weekend researching. Divorce law in our state was no fault, which meant my evidence of his affair wouldn't hold much weight in legal proceedings. We would split assets 50-50, and I would walk away with half of everything we had built together. But that wasn't enough, not nearly enough. Miles's architecture firm, however, presented a different opportunity. I had read their entire employee handbook from front to back. Section 4.7 covered professional ethics, Section 8.2 addressed workplace relationships, and Section 12.4 outlined moral turpitude clauses. Miles wasn't just having an affair, he was involved with a subordinate, which violated company policy. He had used company funds for their relationship, those dinners, those hotels, all charged to his corporate card and disguised as client entertainment. That was fraud. And the firm's founding partners were old-fashioned men who valued reputation above all else. They had built their business on trust, integrity, and family values. They wouldn't take kindly to one of their senior architects, the face of several major projects, being exposed as an adulterer and a fraud. But I needed more. I had to grasp the full extent of his betrayal before I could methodically dismantle his life. On Tuesday evening, while Miles claimed he was working late, I did something I had never imagined myself capable of. I hired a private investigator. His name was Raymond Torres, and he came highly recommended by a colleague who had used him during her own tumultuous divorce. We met in a coffee shop downtown, far from any places Miles might frequent. Raymond, in his 50s, had tired eyes and the patient demeanor of someone who had witnessed every variation of human betrayal. I presented him with the evidence I had gathered: emails, texts, photos, and credit card statements. He barely reacted. "How long have you known?" 5 days. His eyebrows rose slightly. "And you haven't confronted him?" "Not yet." Smart. He leaned back, considering me with newfound respect. "What exactly do you want from me, Mrs. Pays?" "I want every detail of their relationship, where they go, how often they see each other, if there are others. I want to know what I'm dealing with before I make my move." "This isn't about the divorce, is it?" I met his gaze directly. "This is about ensuring he understands what he's lost, what he's destroyed. I don't want him to walk away clean." Raymond nodded slowly. "I'll be honest with you. What you're describing sounds like you want ammunition for complete destruction, not just a fair divorce settlement. Is that a problem?" "No." He pulled out a contract. "But I need you to understand that once we start pulling on these threads, you might uncover things you don't want to know." Affairs are rarely as straightforward as two people simply falling in love. There are often deeper betrayals and uglier truths lurking beneath the surface. I want to know everything, even if it hurts. "I already hurt," I said quietly. "Now I want justice." We shook hands, and he promised results within a week. I returned home to my husband, who greeted me with a kiss at the door and inquired about my day. I lied as easily as breathing. We were in the midst of dinner when his phone rang. Victoria's name didn't appear. He had saved her under the alias Tom Richards, likely a fictional work contact. "I have to take this," he said, already rising from his seat. "Work emergency." He slipped away into his office. I waited exactly 3 minutes before stealthily approaching the door. His voice was low and intimate, nothing like the professional tone he should have been using for a work call. "I know, baby. I miss you too. Just a few more days and I'll figure something out. No, she doesn't suspect anything. I love you too." Each word felt like a nail driven deeper into my heart, but I welcomed the pain. I needed to stay angry. Anger would fuel me through what lay ahead. Raymond called Thursday afternoon. "We need to meet. You found something?" I found everything. We reconvened at the same coffee shop. He slid a folder across the table. "You were right to want the full picture." I opened it, and photos spilled out. Miles and Victoria at restaurants, Miles and Victoria walking hand in hand through the park, and Miles and Victoria entering a condo building downtown. "Their place," Raymond confirmed. "The condo is rented under his name. It has been for 4 months. He's paying $3,000 a month for it. I checked your joint finances. The money's coming from your shared savings account." "He's been siphoning small amounts over the months. You've been unknowingly funding his love nest." My grip tightened on the folder. My own money paying for his affair. "There's more," Raymond said gently. "The timeline extends further back than you thought. I found credit card charges from 10 months ago, jewelry purchases, hotel rooms. He didn't start the affair 6 months ago. That's just when he began using email. They've been together for almost a year. A year. An entire year of lies. Every anniversary dinner, every I love you, every time he had made love to me, all of it contaminated by her presence in his life. "And Victoria?" I asked, my voice barely steady. 26, like you found, but she's not quite the innocent young thing you might think. I did some digging into her background. This isn't her first time with a married man. Her last job in Seattle ended badly. She had an affair with her boss there, too. He divorced his wife and married Victoria's predecessor. There's a pattern. So she was a professional homewrecker. Somehow, that made it worse. "One more thing," Raymond said, his expression turning sympathetic. "I followed them Tuesday night. They met for dinner, then went to the condo. I have time-stamped photos. They were there for 4 hours. Tuesday night, the night Miles had claimed he was working late on the Henderson project. The very night I had sat at home, worried about him, texting to ensure he ate dinner, telling him I loved him. He had been with her while I worried about his well-being." "Mrs. Hayes?" Raymond's voice pulled me back. "Are you all right?" "I'm perfect," I said. And I meant it, because now I had everything I needed. Now I could strike. "What's your next move?" I smiled, and Raymond actually flinched. "I'm going to destroy him." Setting the trap required both patience and precision. I spent the next week embodying the perfect wife, cooking Miles's favorite meals, asking about his day with a seemingly genuine interest. He relaxed into the routine, convinced that his secret was safe. Meanwhile, I was meticulously building my case. I made copies of everything: emails, texts, photos from Raymond, and credit card statements that revealed the money he had stolen from our savings. I compiled a timeline of the affair with such detail that it could serve as evidence in court. Every lie, every hotel stay, every dinner was documented and dated. I consulted with 3 different divorce attorneys, ultimately choosing the most ruthless one. Melissa Grant was a shark in designer heels, renowned for leaving her opponents financially devastated. She reviewed my evidence with the enthusiasm of a predator scenting blood. "This is comprehensive," she said, visibly impressed. "The embezzlement from joint funds, the workplace ethics violations, the duration and scope of the affair. We can make his life very difficult." "I don't want difficult," I corrected her. "I want scorched earth." Melissa smiled. "Then you've come to the right place." We developed a strategy. The divorce would be brutal, but legal. The real damage would come from every other angle: his job, his reputation, his relationship with Victoria. "You're sure about this?" Melissa asked. "Once we start, there's no taking it back. He'll hate you." "Good," I replied. "I want him to hate me. I want to feel a fraction of what I'm feeling." I hired a second private investigator, one Miles would never connect to me, to follow Victoria. I wanted to know everything about her, as well: her routines, her friends, her vulnerabilities. The report came back revealing. Victoria had student loans, significant ones. She was living beyond her means, her lifestyle partially funded by Miles, but also heavily reliant on credit card debt. She had been pressuring him about their future, asking when he would leave his wife, and growing frustrated with the delays. Perfect. I could use that to my advantage. Meanwhile, I made myself indispensable to Miles. When he mentioned the stress at work, I listened with sympathy. When he seemed distant, I gave him the space he needed. I was understanding, supportive, everything a good wife should be. I was lulling him into complacency. The breakthrough came 2 weeks after I discovered the affair. Miles announced that he had to go to New York for a work conference, 3 days the following week. "It's the annual industry summit," he explained over dinner. "Important for client relations. I know it's short notice." "Of course you should go," I replied, already knowing this was a lie. There was no conference. I had checked his firm's calendar. This was a romantic getaway with Victoria. I confirmed it that night while he was in the shower. His email to Victoria read, Booked us that boutique hotel in Soho. You'll love 3 whole days together. I told Kathleen it's for work. Can't wait to have you all to myself. I screenshotted it, added it to my evidence folder, and smiled. This was the opportunity I had been waiting for. Miles left for his fake conference on Wednesday morning. He kissed me goodbye at the door, promised to call every night, and told me he loved me. I watched his car disappear down the street and immediately went to work. First, I called Melissa. It's time. She filed for divorce that afternoon. The papers would be served to Miles on Friday, right in the middle of his romantic getaway. Next, I contacted Miles's firm, not the partners directly. That would come later. Instead, I reached out to their compliance department with an anonymous tip regarding ethics violations. I provided dates, evidence of the relationship with Victoria, and proof of the misused company funds. Let them initiate their investigation. Let the questions begin. Then I drove to the condo, their place. Raymond had given me the address. It was located in a trendy neighborhood, the kind of building with a doorman and expensive lobby furniture, the kind of place that costs $3,000 a month. My $3,000 a month. I had Raymond's photos showing Miles entering and leaving with a key. I had bank statements reflecting the payments. I possessed enough evidence to prove he had rented it. I walked into the lobby as if I owned the place. The doorman looked up. "I'm here about Unit 412, I said confidently. "There's been some confusion regarding the rental agreement. I need to speak with the building manager." It took 20 minutes and a carefully constructed story about marital property and legal disputes, but eventually I walked out with a copy of the lease agreement. Miles's signature was bold and clear, renting a 1-bedroom condo for 12 months. Evidence, more evidence. The pile was growing. On Thursday, I took a personal day from work. I spent the morning at the bank, separating our finances. I withdrew exactly half of everything from our joint accounts, my legal right. I opened my own accounts, changed my direct deposit, and began the process of financial disentanglement. The money Miles had spent on Victoria, approximately $40,000 over 10 months, I documented separately. That was theft from marital assets, and Melissa assured me we could go after him for it. I changed the locks on our house, updated the security codes, altered the passwords to our shared streaming accounts and email, and everything else we had combined in our marriage. I was erasing him from my life with surgical precision. Thursday afternoon, I did something that might have seemed cruel but felt necessary. I called Victoria. She answered on the second ring, her voice cautious. "Hello, Victoria. Hi, this is Kathleen Hayes, Miles's wife." Silence followed. Then, in a small voice, she responded. "Oh, I know about the affair," I said calmly. "I know everything. I've known for 3 weeks. I'm filing for divorce, and I wanted to give you a heads up. The papers are being served tomorrow, and his firm has been notified of your relationship. There will be an investigation." I could hear her scrambling, panicking. "It's not what you think. We're in love. He was going to tell you." "When?" I interrupted. "After another year of lies? After he spent more of my money on fancy hotels and jewelry for you?" My voice remained level, almost pleasant. "I wanted you to know what you're getting, Victoria. You're getting a man who lies to the person he promised to cherish forever, who steals from joint accounts, who risks his career for an affair. Is that really what you want?" "You don't understand what we have," she protested. "I understand perfectly. You're 26 and naive, thinking you're special, but you're not. You're just another affair. And when he gets bored of you, or someone younger comes along, you'll be exactly where I am now. Only you won't have the dignity of being the wronged wife. You'll just be the mistress who should have known better." I hung up before she could respond. Let her stew in that. Let her doubt, question, and wonder if I was right. Let her suspicion poison their perfect little getaway. Friday morning, Miles called me from New York. He sounded stressed. I asked innocently. Yeah, just work stuff. The conference is fine. I miss you. I miss you too, I lied. When will you be home? Sunday afternoon. I'll text you my flight info. Can't wait, I said, and there was a terrible truth in that. I genuinely couldn't wait to see his face when he returned to the ruins of his life. The process server found him Friday afternoon. Raymond had provided them with the hotel address, the boutique hotel in Soho that Victoria adored, the very one Miles had booked for their romantic escape. According to the process server's report, Miles had been in the hotel bar with Victoria when he was served. The look on his face, the server said, was priceless. An hour later, my phone exploded with calls and texts from Miles. What the hell is this? Kathleen, call me right now. We need to talk about this. This is insane. You can't just file for divorce without talking to me. I let them all go to voicemail. I disabled his key code for the house and changed the locks. He couldn't just show up and demand explanations. He would have to wait until Sunday, stew in uncertainty, wonder what I knew, what I had done, and how completely his life had just imploded. That night, I slept better than I had in 3 weeks. Miles came home Sunday afternoon to find his key didn't work. I watched through the window as he tried it multiple times, confusion giving way to anger. Kathleen, open the door, he pounded on the door. We need to talk. I let him pound on the door for 5 minutes before I finally opened it. I didn't invite him in. What the hell is going on? His face was flushed, his eyes wild. Behind the anger, I could see the flicker of fear. You filed for divorce without even talking to me? Did you talk to me before you started sleeping with Victoria? I asked, my tone calm. He flinched. How did you? I saw you at the airport 3 weeks ago. I came home a day early and witnessed you pick her up. I saw you kiss her. I saw the way you looked at her. The way you haven't looked at me in years. My voice was steady, cold. I know everything, Miles. Every dinner, every hotel, every lie. I have evidence. Emails, texts, photos, credit card statements. The money you stole from our savings to pay for your love nest downtown. All of it. He opened his mouth, then closed it, trying to find words. Kathleen, please let me explain. What's there to explain? You've been having an affair for 10 months. You fell in love with someone else. You were too much of a coward to tell me, so you just kept living 2 lives, lying to both of us, stealing from our marriage to fund your grand romance. I leaned against the doorframe. Oh, and by the way, your firm knows about the affair with your subordinate and the misuse of company funds. They're conducting an investigation. His face went pale. You told my work? I provided evidence to their compliance department. They're required to investigate ethics violations. You know that. You signed the conduct agreement. You're trying to destroy my career. I'm documenting your choices. You destroyed your own career when you decided to sleep with your junior colleague and charge the hotels to your corporate card. This is insane. He was yelling now, desperation seeping into his voice. Desperate people make mistakes. Marriages go through rough patches. We can work through this. Work through what, Miles? Work through you telling another woman you love her? Work through you renting a secret apartment with my money? Work through you spending our anniversary with her instead of me? He froze. You know about that? I told you, I know everything. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through photos. I know about the necklace you bought her for Valentine's Day. I know about the weekend you claimed to be at a work retreat but actually took her to that bed and breakfast in Vermont. I know about the night I had the flu and you were supposedly working late but were really playing house with her. Each revelation struck him like a physical blow. He thought he was so careful, believed he had gotten away with it. I loved you, I said quietly. I gave you 7 years of my life. I was faithful, supportive, and patient, and you threw it all away for someone you barely know? It's not like that, he protested. but his voice lacked conviction. Victoria and we have something real, something I haven't felt in years. Not since me, I finished. You're saying the same things to her that you said to me when we first met. The same romance, the same passion, the same promises. And in a few years, when that fades too, you'll find someone else. Because the problem isn't me, Miles, it's you. That's not fair. Fair? I laughed, and it came out harsh. You want to talk about fair? You stole from me. You lied to me every single day for almost a year. You made me doubt myself, made me think our distance was my fault, that I needed to try harder to make you happy. All the while, you were getting everything you needed from someone else. I'm sorry, he said, his voice cracking. God, Kathleen, I'm so sorry. I never meant to hurt you. It just happened, and then it was too late. I didn't know how to stop. You could have stopped by being honest, by having the basic decency to end our marriage before starting another relationship. But you wanted both. You wanted the security of a wife at home and the thrill of a mistress on the side. You wanted everything, and you didn't care what it cost me. He was crying now, actually crying. Part of me, a small, dying fragment that still remembered loving him, wanted to comfort him. But the larger part, the one forged from ice and fury, felt nothing but satisfaction. What happens now? He asked, his voice small. Now you deal with the consequences. The divorce will be finalized in 6 months. I'm taking my half of everything. More, actually. Since I can prove you stole marital assets, you'll need to find somewhere else to live. This house is in my name. My parents gave us the down payment. Remember, Kathleen, please. Your firm will probably fire you. Victoria, too. Workplace affairs between supervisor and subordinate are grounds for termination, and you've given them plenty of evidence. I smiled coldly. But hey, at least you'll have each other, right? Isn't that what you wanted? To be with your true love? Don't do this, he begged. Don't throw away 7 years because I made a mistake. You made a choice, Miles. 100 choices, 1,000 tiny decisions that led you further and further away from our marriage. And now, I'm making my choice. I'm choosing myself. I'm choosing to walk away from someone who clearly doesn't value me. I started to close the door, but he put his hand out, stopping it. I do value you. I do love you. This whole thing with Victoria, it doesn't change what we had. It changes everything. It makes every memory suspect, every I love you a potential lie. Every moment of happiness tainted by the knowledge that you were capable of this level of deception. I looked him squarely in the eye. You don't get to keep me as a backup plan while you explore your grand passion. You made your choice. Now, live with it. I closed the door in his face, locked it, and listened as he cried, begged, and pounded on the wood for another 10 minutes before he finally left. Then I walked to my bedroom now, not ours, and allowed myself to feel the full weight of what I had just done. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like death. The death of my marriage, my trust, my belief in happily ever after. But death could be liberating. From the ashes, I could become something new, something stronger, something that would never let anyone hurt me like this again. I looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were dry, my jaw was set. I looked like a stranger. Good. The old Kathleen was gone, the woman who believed in love, trust, and forever. This new version didn't believe in anything except consequences. And Miles's consequences were just beginning. The next 3 weeks unfolded like a masterclass in controlled destruction. Miles's firm moved swiftly. The investigation I had initiated with my anonymous tip uncovered precisely what I had given them. concrete evidence of an affair with a subordinate, misuse of company funds, and violations of their ethics policy. Both Miles and Victoria were terminated within a week. I felt nothing as I watched his career implode. He had built his reputation on a foundation of integrity and family values. His portfolio even included a children's hospital and a family wellness center. The irony was almost beautiful. Victoria called me twice. I didn't answer. She left voicemails that alternated between anger and desperation. In the second one, she was crying, claiming I had ruined her life, that she and Miles were truly in love, that I was being vindictive. I deleted them both. Her life was not my concern. Melissa was ruthless in the divorce proceedings. She filed for a fault-based divorce, citing adultery and financial misconduct. Miles's lawyers attempted to push back, trying to negotiate for a no-fault settlement, but the evidence was too compelling. We had him cornered. He could either accept our terms or face a trial where every detail of his affair would become public record. His choice was clear. He chose to settle. I got the house, all of it, not just half. I received 3/4 of our savings to compensate for what he had stolen. I got the better car, the furniture, the art we had collected, the life we had built together. He walked away with his dignity barely intact and a fraction of what he once had. The financial damage was severe, but it paled in comparison to the blow I dealt to his reputation. I had spent weeks compiling evidence, cross-referencing dates, and building an irrefutable timeline. Once the divorce was filed and I was no longer bound by any loyalty to Miles, I began to speak carefully and strategically, never vindictively, but simply stating facts when asked. I had lunch with the wife of Miles's business partner and casually mentioned how difficult it had been to discover the affair, how long it had gone on, and how many lies he had told. She was sympathetic and understanding, and within a week, everyone in their social circle was aware. I attended a charity gala, one where Miles and I had been on the planning committee. When people asked where he was, I smiled sadly and said we were divorcing, that he had been having an affair with a colleague, and that I was trying to move forward. Whispers spread like wildfire. I made sure every friend, every colleague, every acquaintance knew the truth, not through malicious gossip, but through quiet, heartbroken honesty. I played the role of the wronged wife, dignified, hurt, yet gracious. Miles's reputation began to crumble. The architecture community was smaller than most realized. Word spread about the affair, the termination, and the ethics violations. Projects where he had been the lead designer quietly removed his name, and clients canceled meetings. His professional network, built over a decade, dissolved before his eyes. He tried to call me several times during those first few weeks, but I never answered. There was nothing left to say. Raymond kept me updated on Miles's downward spiral. He had moved in with Victoria after they were both fired. They lasted exactly 3 weeks in their love nest before the fighting began. It turned out that poverty and unemployment weren't as romantic as secret hotel rendezvous. Who knew? Victoria blamed Miles for their firing. Miles blamed Victoria for being too obvious about their relationship. They both blamed me for being vindictive. They blamed the firm for being too strict. They blamed everyone but themselves. By week 4, Victoria had moved back to Seattle. According to her social media, she posted a vague status about toxic relationships and lessons learned. The comments were brutal, with friends calling her out for the affair and pointing out that dating a married man had predictable consequences. Meanwhile, Miles was alone, unemployed, blacklisted in his industry, living in a cheap apartment, and burning through his settlement money as he watched his entire life unravel. And I felt empty, not satisfied, not vindicated, just hollow. I was learning that revenge didn't actually heal anything. It merely provided a distraction while the wound festered. 6 months after I discovered the affair, the divorce was finalized. I sat in Melissa's office, signing the final papers that legally ended my marriage. My hand was steady, my eyes dry. I had already cried all my tears. "You won," Melissa said, as I stood to leave. "He's lost everything. His job, his reputation, his wife, even his girlfriend. You destroyed him." "I know," I replied. "So why don't you look happy?" I met her gaze. "Because destroying him didn't fix what he broke." I walked out of her office into a life I had carefully reconstructed. I had thrown myself into work, earning a promotion and taking on high-profile clients. I started therapy to process the betrayal, joined a gym, took up painting, and reconnected with friends I had neglected during my marriage. I had done everything you're supposed to do after a divorce. I had healed, or at least I had performed healing convincingly. But at night, alone in the house that was now solely mine, I felt the emptiness. Not for Miles. I didn't miss him. I didn't love him. I barely remembered what loving him had felt like. But I missed something. The idea of partnership, the belief that someone could know all of you and still choose you, the hope that love could endure, had been shattered by Miles. No amount of revenge could resurrect that hope. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, I ran into him at the grocery store of all places. He looked terrible, thin, unshaven, wearing clothes that had clearly seen better days. When he saw me, he froze, his hand tightening around the shopping cart. We stared at each other across the produce section. 2 people who had once promised forever, now mere strangers. "Kathleen," he said finally, "you look good." "Thank you." Silence. Awkward, heavy silence hung between us. "I'm sorry," he said. "I know it doesn't matter now, but I need you to know I'm truly sorry for everything. You deserved better." "I did," I agreed. "I lost everything." His voice cracked. My job, my reputation, Victoria, everything. And I know it's my fault. I know I did this to myself. I should have felt triumph. This was what I had wanted. Him broken, finally understanding the consequences of his choices. Yet all I felt was exhaustion. "Good luck, Miles," I said. And I meant it. Not out of lingering love, but because I was done. Done with anger, done with revenge, done with allowing him to occupy any space in my heart, even the space reserved for hate. I walked past him, paid for my groceries, and drove home to my empty house. That night, I deleted all the evidence folders, the emails, screenshots, photos, and the meticulously constructed timeline of his betrayal. I didn't need them anymore. I'd gotten my revenge. I'd made him pay. Yet it had given me nothing but the bitter satisfaction of watching him suffer. But suffering wasn't a foundation on which to build a new life. At some point, I knew I had to let go. Not forgive. I'd never forgive him. But release. I needed to stop allowing his betrayal to define me. 6 months after the divorce, I began dating again. Casual, nothing serious. I wasn't ready for anything serious. Perhaps I would never be ready again. But I could enjoy coffee with interesting people. I could engage in conversations that didn't revolve around betrayal and revenge. I could remember what it felt like to laugh without bitterness. Slowly, painfully, I started to feel human again. A year after the divorce, I sold the house. Too many memories, both good and bad. I bought a condo downtown, decorating it exactly how I wanted, filling it with furniture that belonged to me and me alone. One day, I received a call from Raymond. "Thought you'd want to know," he said. "Miles filed for bankruptcy last month, and Victoria's engaged to someone new, a guy from her hometown in Seattle." "Thanks for letting me know," I replied. After I hung up, I sat with that information. Miles was bankrupt, and Victoria had moved on. The people who had shattered my life were now moving forward with theirs. Damaged, yes, but surviving. And so had I. I had wanted them to suffer, and they had. I had wanted consequences, and there had been consequences. I had gotten everything I had planned for. But revenge, I learned, was like poison. It killed what it touched, but it also contaminated the one administering it. I had expended so much energy trying to destroy Miles that I had nearly destroyed myself in the process. The rage that had sustained me for months had burned itself out, leaving only scars. I looked at my reflection in the new condo's bathroom mirror. The woman staring back wasn't the naive person who had believed in forever, but she also wasn't the cold, calculated destroyer who had meticulously dismantled her husband's life. He was someone different, someone tougher, yes, someone more cautious, but also someone who had survived, someone who faced the worst betrayal imaginable and emerged on the other side. Not whole, I would never be whole again, but functional, capable, and strong in ways I had never had to be before. Miles had broken me, and I had broken him back. Now we were both broken individuals living fractured lives, each carrying the weight of what we had done to one another. There was no winner, just two people who had once loved each other, now having destroyed that love through cruelty and revenge. I had thought that consequences would heal me, that making him pay would somehow balance the scales, restoring what he had taken. But you cannot restore broken trust with revenge. You cannot heal betrayal with destruction. You can only survive it, endure it, and learn to live with the scars. And that's exactly what I did. I survived. I met someone. I hadn't intended to. I had convinced myself that I was fine alone, that I didn't need or want another relationship. Yet life has a way of surprising you when you stop looking. His name was Alexander. He was a photographer, divorced like me, carrying his own scars and his own story of betrayal. We met at an art gallery opening. I had taken up collecting art as a hobby to fill the empty walls of my new life. We started as friends. Coffee turned into dinners, which turned into long conversations that stretched into the early morning. He understood the weight of betrayal and how it fundamentally changes you. He didn't push or demand more than I could give. And slowly, carefully, I began to learn how to trust again. Not blindly, never blindly. I had learned my lesson there, but this time with my eyes wide open, aware of the risks yet willing to take them anyway, because the alternative, living forever in bitterness and isolation, was its own kind of death. 2 years after everything fell apart, I ran into Victoria. She was in a coffee shop with her new husband, looking happy, youthful, and completely detached from the drama of our shared past. When she saw me, our eyes locked. In that fleeting moment, I saw my own story reflected back at me. We were both women who had been hurt by Miles, who had made choices we couldn't take back, and who had paid prices we hadn't anticipated. I nodded at her, and she nodded back, a silent acknowledgement of our mutual damage, our mutual survival. Then I walked away. I heard through the grapevine that Miles had eventually found work at a smaller firm in another state. He had rebuilt slowly and painfully, learning to live with the reputation of being that guy who had the affair. He never remarried. When I heard about his life, I felt nothing. No satisfaction at his struggles, no bitterness at his modest recovery. Just nothing. He had become irrelevant to my story. A chapter I had closed, a lesson I had learned, a scar that had healed enough to stop hurting. On my 3rd anniversary with Alexander, he asked me to marry him. I said yes, not because I believed in forever anymore. I had learned that forever was a lie people told themselves, but because I believed in today, in choosing someone every day and being chosen in return, in building something real on a foundation of honesty instead of illusion. The wedding was small, friends, family, those who had supported me through the darkness. I wore a dress the color of champagne and carried wildflowers instead of roses. As I stood at the altar, gazing into Alexander's steady, honest face, thoughts of Miles flooded my mind. Memories of the airport, red roses, devastation, and revenge. In that moment, I realized something profound. The best revenge wasn't his suffering. It wasn't his ruined career, his isolation, or his bankruptcy. The best revenge was this: me happy again. Me healed enough to try anew. Me building a life that he had no part in, no claim to, and no shadow over. He had tried to destroy me with his betrayal, but instead, he had forged me into something stronger. I was no longer the woman who had loved him. I was no longer the woman who had sought to destroy him. I was simply myself, scarred yet whole, damaged yet growing, broken in places but patched back together with gold, like Japanese pottery that becomes more beautiful through its repairs. Miles had taught me what betrayal looked like, while Alexander was teaching me what trust felt like. Both were necessary lessons. As I recited my vows, promises I meant with a clarity I had never possessed before, I understood exactly what they cost. In that moment, I felt the last remnants of anger dissolve away. I was free, not because I had forgiven Miles, I hadn't and likely never would, but because I had forgiven myself for loving him, for not seeing the signs, and for the months I had spent consumed by revenge. I had done what I needed to survive, and now I was doing what I needed to truly live. The difference I had learned was everything. When Alexander kissed me, sealing our promises, I didn't think about Miles. I didn't compare or remember, didn't fear. I simply lived in that moment, this perfect, precious, hard-won moment of happiness. And that was the truest revenge of all. Finding joy again despite everything that had sought to extinguish it. The story of my betrayal didn't conclude with destruction. It culminated in reconstruction. Miles faced his consequences, while I found my revenge. We both carried our scars, yet I also gained something he would never possess, a second chance at happiness, earned through pain and rooted in truth. In the end, I didn't merely survive what he had done to me, I transcended it. And that made all the difference.